Hello, everyone. My name is Lisa Wisner, and I am the Human Capital Services Manager for the City of Corpus Christi. And I am so excited that you are joining us on this very, very exciting Friday. By the way, y'all, we got a tornado warning. Megan, would you introduce yourself and tell me about this tornado warning? Did you not get it?
Lisa, you're like dropping a bomb right now.
You didn't know about the tornado warnings?
No, I didn't know about the tornado warnings. What is going on here?
Oh my gosh. So Megan, y'all know Megan Isasi. Megan is our learning and development analyst coordinator. Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry, Megan.
It's okay.
We have another analyst coming today. So I have analyst all over my mind, and you'll get to know who she is in a little bit. But Megan, so this morning I wake up and Dennis goes, there's tornado warnings in Corpus Christi. So you didn't get that?
No. What is going on?
So there's COVID. Then I think there was like a hurricane, and then there's like mosquitoes the size of birds, like literally. And now we have a tornado.
Well, thank you for telling me. Oh my gosh. If my power goes out, you know why.
All the stress that's going on around the world right now has got us all a little rattled. But I have to tell you that one of the graces that I have in my life is working for the City of Corpus Christi and being able to have an opportunity to pour into you some knowledge and give you some skills so that you can live your best life. And living your best life is really right in here. It's really between your ears. It's about what happens in your mind, right, Megan? It's how you see these things, right? And I feel like these opportunities for us to go fully online through COVID-19, I think has really optimized the work that we do. We've been able to consolidate a lot of the things we've done and be able to deliver to you. And we've actually increased our audience, right, Megan?
Yeah, I'm really excited about this whole virtual thing. I think it's really the push that some of us needed.
Yep.
No matter what industry you're in, you're kind of being forced to go digital, to use tech in a way that's creative that maybe you've never even thought about using before.
Right.
I think it's really just kind of stretched us in a different kind of way than any other thing could have done. So I'm really excited that we're able to be utilizing this today. And you can see that we were having so much fun.
I'm stretching us, Megan. When you said stretch us, I was like, I want to feel like a rubber band right now. That's how a rubber band feels. And I like how you use the word stretch because that's our job today. We are always here every Friday at 10 a.m. to stretch you into the learning zone. We want you to be stretchable. We want you to grow and you stretch yourself. We don't want you to snap. So don't stretch yourself into the red zone. Stay in that stretch zone so that you're learning and you become a stronger human. So I'm going to stop with all the messing around, Megan. And now I want to kind of chime on what we're going to be talking about today. So I know we're talking about the living resume. We're going to be talking about how to build a resume that not only speaks to your talents, but is also seen as an opportunity for you to see how your career is growing. But just before we start, I want to talk a little bit about talents. And I want to talk about how you have talents that are pure potential. Megan, what do you think about that?
Well, not too long ago, I started reading Grit by Angela Duckworth. And what she says is that as much as talent counts, effort counts twice. So you can be the most talented person in the world. You could be a natural born talented person, as they say, but that talent is only going to get you so far. At some point or another, you will plateau. It's proven that you will reach this epitome of your talent. And after talent, what do you have? You have your effort.
Exactly. Yes, the effort, and that's pure potential. And so there's actually this saying by, I can't remember who it's from, but it says the power plant does not actually have energy. It generates energy, right? So you don't go to the power plant expecting it. It transforms different forms into the energy that we use. And that's you right now. You have talents and you have to be able to work those talents, right? You're the power plant. You got to work those talents into the energy that you need to have action in your life. So for our presentation today, I just have a couple of questions that I wanted to ask you. Do you wonder why you make certain choices in your life, right? Why do you have the job you have? Why did you make the decision to join us right now live, right? Do you also wonder why you do what you do? And do you wonder why you're better at some things than other things? And the reason is because you're making decisions right now without even realizing it. And so when we're talking about the resume, your living resume, we're going to be talking a little bit about what you really should be doing. And it's making yourself have a target. You need to be aiming for something. There needs to be a destination, right, Megan?
Yes. Everybody needs a clear point and direction
Right.
on where they're going so that they can see the destination. If you're following all the winds,
Yeah.
forget it. You'll never get there.
Exactly. So you just have to focus on your performance, okay? So the goal is, we're getting a whole bunch of messages here. So I'm just gonna go into the comments because I'm just wanting to make sure like we're not getting blown up here with comments. But the point is, we need you to focus on your performance, okay? So first, we want you to think about this presentation that's happening right now. We want you to think about the destination that you're headed in, okay? And then we want you to create a roadmap. Megan, you always hear me telling people that we're taking a road trip to Colorado, right?
Yes, and you always say Colorado.
I do, because I have this dream that one day I'm driving to Colorado and along the way we're going to Roswell, and I don't know. All I know is I'm creating this image of a vacation we're taking with my family. But that's how you should see your talents. You should see your talents as something that you're good at. But how are you going to get to your destination? What you actually want to do, where you want your career to go. And it starts with having that destination. Where do you want to go? Putting it on your living resume, right? And then using that living resume as an area for you to see where the gaps are so that you can create that roadmap of where you need to go, right? And then along the way, you'll do some course adjustment, right? So, things may not go your way and you start to adjust. But again, it's important to understand that the way you become successful is to focus on the performance, not just saying I'm talented in this, I'm good at this. No, talent is only 10%. And as Megan said, you have to understand that it takes work. It takes hard work for you to actualize those talents into strengths. That's a lot of information, Megan.
It is. It's a lot, but it's good. It's meaty. It's got meat on its bones. And
yeah,
I always say that even the simplest concepts, some people may have never heard. So even though we may be saying things that seem simple, somebody out there may have never heard them before. So we need to be diligent about sharing information.
In fact, one of the things I was told once is that even though somebody else has already said it, they may not have said it the way you would say it or how you would understand it. So that's why it's important for you to share, right? So what we do here at the Learning Institute is we have a model where we're all about theory to mastery, okay? And the way you get there is through practice. And practice is the sharing with other people. So you learn the theory. So we've got books. In fact, if you don't know, I've been studying this morning. I'm about to take an exam for something crazy, but been studying. Megan, you've been studying too? Okay, you know what? Champion's got books all around them, fully tabbed. Everything's just getting ready for it. So we learn the theory, and then we bring ourselves into this environment. So we practice, right? Speaking the words, saying the things helps you practice. And then the true mastery comes with helping other people also do the same thing we're doing. Right, Megan?
Yes, 100%. I mean, sharing knowledge is what we want Corpus Christi to adopt as a behavior. And we're hoping that through just even these small workshops that we do every Friday, that this attitude of sharing knowledge becomes contagious.
Yes. So if you look at the very bottom, you'll see that there's an opportunity for you to send us any questions or comments or just pretty much any random thoughts you have about the presentation today. So feel free to chime into the chat. But the other thing I want to also mention is that as we're going through the presentation today, I want you to think about what you're going to implement, not just listening just to listen, but what is the one thing you're going to listen for today? And before the end of today, you're going to implement it. Okay, so Dr. Mills is going to be coming on and Nicole Presswood. They're both going to be giving you some really good information. But it's important for you to not just be passive in this process. When we're talking about learning like a champion, if you were the world champion of learning, what would that look like? Okay, that means you're taking notes and you're implementing and you're not going to sleep until you do the one thing that you said you were going to do. So our keys for success today are for you not only to fully understand that your talent is just the opportunity. It's the opportunity to have the potential to do well. You have to turn those talents into strengths. And the way you do that is by working them. And so understand that. And then I have a statistic for you from Gallup. In fact, I just read it today. And it says that people who focus on their strengths versus their talents are 3 times more likely to have a great life. Megan, would you like to have a great life?
Yes, 100%. I'm ready for a great life.
Yeah, a great quality of life, right? So you're excited. Maybe you're able to throw those covers off and get up in the morning and be ready for work or whatever it is, right? Ready to be a city champion. But the statistic also says that people who focus on their strengths are 6 times more likely to be engaged at work. 6 times! Megan, if I told you that you were 2 times more engaged at work, wouldn't that be great?
Yeah.
Yeah, 6 times is like, oh my goodness, that's crazy, right? Imagine if every single city employee was 6 times more engaged at work. What do you think that would mean for the city of Corpus Christi?
That would mean our mission completed, Lisa. Oh my
Right?
God.
Check that box, done, right? We'll all be taking a vacation wherever the staycation is because we don't want to live Corpus Christi, right? We're just going to be vacationing in our own city. We will, in fact, be the best city, not only in the state of Texas, in the entire United States. And so when we're talking about you seeing your talents and turning them into strengths, this is what we're talking about, making the city of Corpus Christi the best city in the state of Texas. So now we're going to be bringing you our speaker, who is Dr. Leslie Mills, and she is not a surprise to you all because you have seen her previously. She gave a presentation to us. She talked about career services at Texas A&M University, Corpus Christi. She did an amazing presentation, and based off of that presentation, Megan, wouldn't you agree that we thought she needed to come back?
Lisa, it was just that one sentence that kind of spurred this whole thing. When she
Yes.
said that a resume was a living document, I
Yes.
could see that in my head visually. And we knew after that, because the session kind of rolled into this whole resume thing.
Yep.
And we knew that we just kind of needed a separate session for do's and don'ts.
Exactly. So Dr. Mills, we're about to introduce you to everybody, and I know you probably have a presentation that you will be giving, but I want to thank you so much for giving us your time again so that you are part of this City Champion family. So thank you so much for joining us. But more important than that, I just need you to know how much we appreciate you sharing this information for not only for the City of Corpus Christi employees, but for anybody who is watching, not only on YouTube, but also on Facebook.
Great. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the invite.
Yeah. Okay. So did you want to share your screen and then we can go ahead and get started?
Yes, we are going to attempt to share my screen
Okay.
as we are all learning technology, right?
I know. And we were sharing before. Champions do more. So we're trying.
Okay. Let's find it. It was working.
Yes.
Oh, why does it go away? Okay.
We'll find it. And as Dr. Mills is pulling up her presentation, I want to remind you that your goal for today is to find one thing that you're going to implement, okay? You're going to name it. So whatever that one thing is, you're not going to write a million things like I usually do. And then I'm like, I can't do everything. You're going to write one thing down, and then you're going to claim it and say, that's my one thing, right? And then you're going to aim like an archer aims at a target. You're going to aim your excellence at that. Right, Megan?
Yes, and I want to point out our live comments. We have a Michelle Rabol with Toastmasters, actually, one of our Toastmaster family members who is watching and sharing with us today. Thank you, Michelle.
Fantastic. We appreciate you. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. And now, Dr. Mills, we are ready for you to take it away.
All right, we're ready to go. Now I got it shared. We are all learning new technologies right now during the pandemic and learning how to adjust to our new virtual world. And so one of the exciting things is to think about your resume and all of the wonderful things that you do every day and you accomplish in your job and how to communicate that to employers on your resume. As we've mentioned, your resume should be a living document. This should be something that you're continually revising, you're continually revisiting. It's helpful to revisit it about once a year, but even periodically, maybe once a quarter, you really want to sit down and think about what you've added to your company, to your organization, and to your position as a result of you being in there. So I'm just going to go over some tips and tricks on writing your resume and how to communicate that information and to employers. So my first question, and you might be able to help me out with the comments because I'm not able to see those at this time, but how long do you think you have for your resume to make an impact with employers? So maybe there's some, you want to chat that put that in the chat tool, and any guess?
I'm not sure. Megan, what do you think? How long do you have for your resume to make an impact with employers? You know, let me tell you, as soon as I submit my resume, they better just give me the job. I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding, y'all.
I don't think it's very long. And Nicole probably will be able to speak to this whenever she comes on, because when recruiters are screening, I mean, they are going fast because they have hundreds to go through. So it's probably not very long, Dr. Mills.
And it's
Yeah,
probably
you're
a visual thing, right? Isn't it just like maybe a visual thing and not a content thing?
Yeah, exactly. So it is a visual thing at first. About 6 seconds is what we estimate, and research shows that employers take about 6 seconds to decide if they're going to read a resume further. So as you mentioned, it's a visual thing. We want to make sure that our resume looks clean and it looks formatted properly, and it's something that just is appealing for the employer to look at. And then after that first 6-second initial glance, they're going to then take some time to review it further, but then you still don't have a ton of time. As you mentioned, employers have hundreds of resumes that they're reviewing, and so they're looking for resumes that they can scan. We oftentimes refer to employers scanning resumes, not reading resumes. And so it's really important to keep that in mind as you're formatting and creating your document. So one thing, we refer to your resume as your marketing tool. This is telling your story and you're using it to market yourself. Ideally, oftentimes individuals think that their resume is what's going to help them get the job, but the resume just helps you get the interview, and then the interview gets you the job. So both are just as important, but that initial resume is really critical to be your marketing tool. Ideally, you want to customize your resume for each position you apply for. So as I said, being a living document and revisiting it frequently, that's something you're going to kind of create a base resume. And then as you apply for different positions, you're going to customize your resume for those positions and those companies and organizations you're applying for. You want to use the job posting that organization has posted, and use the keywords as a guide to create your resume and to use those targeted keywords in your resume. Again, you want to think of selling yourself to the hiring manager. This is your marketing tool. You want to show that hiring manager what you can do for them. And so that's the best way to communicate your skills and your knowledge and your successes on your resume to employers. I caution individuals not to use a Word template. You do want to shop around for a format that you like and that maybe is relevant to your field and your area of specialty. But avoid using that Word template for a number of reasons, but one of them just being that it makes it very difficult to make adjustments and changes to your document. And it can also create kind of a very generic look for your resume, that if I am a hiring manager and I get 10 resumes that look just like the others because they're all using a Word template, then it's probably not going to be a document that's going to stand out to me as a hiring manager. So again, yes, definitely.
Sorry, Dr. Mills, we had a comment from Michelle, and she said that, and I guess she's a recruiter, she said that she usually likes it when it's well written so she can read it fast, right? Do you
Yes.
agree with that?
I do. And in a moment, I'm going to highlight using bullets instead of paragraphs to communicate on your resume. That way it's something that I can easily scan as a reader. Again, we want to make sure that reader has an easy time scanning your resume, not reading in great detail. That's a great point. All right, so let's kind of talk about the design of your resume. Overall, I mentioned not using a Word template. So how do you format or design your document? Typically, a resume should be about 1 page to 2 page maximum in length. For a individual who doesn't have a ton of professional experience, we might see a 1 page resume. For someone who's been in the field for longer, we might see that 2 page maximum length. But again, you want to keep this as a concise document as possible. I always warn our students at the university and individuals that we're working with that you do not have to put every job you've ever had on your resume. This should be a highlight of your experiences that are going to connect you to the position and the job that you're applying for. Ideally, a resume is about 1-inch margins to a 0.5-inch margin, and you want to use a simple font. And about a 12-point font, 11-point font is ideal. You don't want to get too small because some of us are, getting older and harder to see, and we don't have to get out the magnifying glass to read your resume. Sometimes there's those tricks when I say keep it to 1 page. We drop down the font so small it's difficult to read. So ideally, let's keep it to a simple font.
Dr. Mills, have you looked at my resume?
We will definitely look at your resume.
I'm like
Definitely.
the expert of like 10-point font with this much margin. I'm kidding.
Yes.
To
Then
squeeze everything in there, right?
oftentimes work on spacing to help get it there. And again, 2 pages is good, as long as it doesn't go over 2 pages. As we said, employers are scanning, they're not reading. So if I get a booklet and I have to read it, I'm probably not going to read it.
Yeah.
You want to balance your verbiage with your white space on the document. Again, and remember, you have 6 seconds to impress that employer to make them want to read your document further. And you also want to place the most relevant information to that position, to that organization up at the top, with your less relevant information towards the bottom. We use what we call reverse chronological format, and that's the most common format of resume you'll find, where we put our most current experiences and our most current position first, and then our past experiences after that. And so that's something to keep in mind when you are formatting and documenting and creating your resume. Now, I've told you about some things to include on your resume. What about things not to include? So we don't want to use graphics or colors. One of the challenges with using colored font is if I'm an employer and I print it off in black and white, sometimes that colored font that I use to hopefully stand out to the employer, now it doesn't stand out because it turns out this very light gray. You also want to avoid using I statements and me statements. So avoid using personal pronouns on your resume. It is an art form with creating and writing your bullets on your resume when we get to the experience section. And we'll talk about that in a moment about how you can create those without using the I and me statements. So what sections do we typically see in a resume? So typically a resume is going to have your header or your contact information at the very top of the page. You want to make sure it stands out. You want to then have a professional profile or a professional summary or an objective statement. This is optional. Not everyone includes this section on your resume. As you can imagine, this is one of the first things an employer is going to read. So you want to make sure that if you do have this section, that is well written and it is a clear and concise document and formatted good at that very top section. Because if it gets too wordy or it doesn't come across properly to the employer, it can actually have a negative effect on you. So just perfecting that professional profile or summary can be helpful. Individuals will then include possibly their education or their coursework or maybe any certifications or trainings you participated in. And so those all can go under this education section. And then finally, we typically get to what we call the meat and potatoes of your resume. That's your experience section. This is where you're going to describe to me your work experience. For some individuals, this might be some volunteer work that they did, and also looking at any internships you've participated in as well. And so these are all sections we would include or could include under the experience section. A skills section is commonly seen on your resume as well, and that can be very industry specific. And then honors, awards, and activities are other sections that we might see towards the bottom of the resume. So as I said, level of importance or relevance to the employer from top to bottom. So those middle sections, my education, my experience, and my skills, those might come in different organizations. So one might come before the other. But typically towards the bottom is where we'll find the honors, awards, and activities. So I'm going to take a moment to kind of talk through each of those sections for you, starting with the header. So what does your heading look like? It should include your name, a little bit larger font, possibly bold, and it typically is centered on the document. You're going to want to include your email and a phone number. And your address, if you would like. This is optional. Not everyone chooses to put their address on their resume. And we're finding more and more for various reasons, whether it be for security reasons or possibly even discrimination, possibly due to zip code and socioeconomic status related to that zip code. Some individuals are choosing not to put their address on their resume, and that's okay, as long as you have your email and your phone number. I do warn our students and possibly need to warn others in the community as well to make sure that that email address is a professional email address and not Marty Party 24. So we kind of warn our students about that. And they always get a chuckle when I say that, but we do get some, hot lips 36 on our resumes. And so just making sure you do keep that professional.
Can we talk a little bit about that? Because I think sometimes people think that they're stuck with the email they created when they were like a freshman in college. Can they just create a brand new one?
Definitely. So you can create a Gmail, a Yahoo, or just a general email. Create a new email if you would like. If you feel like your other is not professional, I found that my for example, I'm kind of like that you mentioned. I created my email when I was a freshman or a senior in high school going into college, and I found that it's inundated with junk, and so I created a new one, and now it's a more professional tone. Not that my other one was unprofessional, but my new one is a little more professional, so it does come across a little different. But just making sure that's a nice professional email for the employers to contact and reach you at. You can include a LinkedIn profile or a professional or personal website link on your resume in this contact section if you have one. One of the things I do give for student or individuals and forewarn them is if you are going to include that LinkedIn profile or you are going to include a personal website or professional website, to make sure it's current and that you're staying active on that site, maybe that LinkedIn site, and that it also is professional, again, that it has a professional headshot, or that professional information is being conveyed on that document or on that site. And then finally, thinking through what we don't typically see on a resume. We don't typically see any personal or sensitive information, your birth date, your social security number. Don't put a photograph on your resume. We have seen some resumes that contain a photograph, and that's not necessary. Plus, that can lead to discrimination. So that's something we also discourage as well.
Dr. Mill, but I'm so cute. They should hire me because I'm so cute. So I should.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? I'm kidding. No, but that's important, right? It's important to know that when you're being analyzed in terms of a job that you're applying for, you don't want to put yourself in a situation where you're putting yourself out there for a case, right? A case to be put against why they didn't or did not hire you.
Right. And that's actually why some employers, if they find a resume that has a photo on it, they actually just go ahead and put it in the no pile and don't look at it, because they don't want that possibility of even having to deal with that scenario. So that will get you just put in the no pile, just because an employer doesn't want to even put themselves in that situation. So definitely something to think about. So after your header, and that's your contact info, then we move into your professional summary or objective statement. This is a little trickier section to write on your resume. Here you want to focus on what you can do for the company and how can you meet their needs. You don't want to write it about you and the fact that you are seeking a job at blank company looking to grow as a professional. That's not what employers are interested in. They want to know what you're going to bring to them. So maybe I'm an individual who's going to bring with them 5 years of supervisory experience with professional experience in, and you can list maybe a computer program or a software program that you're familiar with and you have expertise in. So really focus on what you're going to bring into that company. Again, you want to use those keywords from that job description. One of the things I like to do is print off that job description when I find it and highlight the keywords and the key experiences that they're looking for, so that I make sure in some format I incorporate those on my resume. And so customizing your resume with those keywords is critical and is key. Again, as I mentioned before, this professional summary or objective statement can be the first thing that they read after your contact info. So just make sure it's proofread and it's formatted nicely. And it typically about 2 to 3 sentences is tops in this section. This is an optional section unless this job posting specifically says. In this section, you can also include specifically the position you're applying for and the company, just so if, for instance, the city of Corpus Christi gets probably hundreds of resumes, and so they may need to be dividing them into piles of who's applying for an HR position versus a marketing position. And so that might help them divvy them up as well. So just kind of keeping that in mind as well. Your next section is typically your education section. And as I mentioned, this includes anything from your university, the degrees, your major and your minor can be important on there, as well as any additional trainings and certificates or certifications that you have. always think about what's going to be needed or expected for that position you're applying for, or what's going to help you stand out from other candidates when you're thinking about those trainings and certifications. If you're applying for a job that doesn't have anything to do with food handlers certification, then I may not include my food handler certification on my resume. But if it's something that's going to be connected and related to the position I'm applying for, then definitely something I want to probably include on my resume.
Dr. Mills, we got a question from Facebook, and this is Michelle. Michelle, thank you so much for watching this show. We really appreciate you. Sending you lots of City Champion love. How many resumes should you have if it's specific to the company? So I'm guessing she's talking through the company you're applying for. Maybe there's multiple positions that you're applying for. Should you craft multiple resumes with multiple scenarios of how you could work there?
Yes, definitely. So again, I would customize the resume for the position because the positions might be very different. I'll use myself as an example. I have spent time in the classroom as a faculty member, but I've also worked in student affairs, in housing, and as an academic advisor, and now in career services. And so I have one resume that I might draft that might include my faculty information and my teaching philosophy and that kind of area, where my other might include my student service or student activities and student affairs kind of background. And so if I'm submitting those to the university, I would submit one version for one posting and one version for the other posting. So that's a really good question. If you're applying for a job with the city of Corpus Christi and there's multiple positions, customize for each position.
Thank you.
Definitely. All right, so the meat and potatoes of your resume, we call it, is your experience section. Here, you really want to describe your skills and your accomplishments. One of the things we find is the individuals really struggle with this section because they really just want to, or they initially, when they write it, they just talk about the job duties they did. Taking your resume to the next level is actually describing not just the job duties, but actually telling me, how did you improve the sales, the processes, the morale of the company or the organization? What did you accomplish when you were there in that organization? That helps the employer understand what skills and what you're going to bring to their company and what you're going to bring to that position. So as you're writing your experience section, as you can see on this image over here, we use bullets, not paragraphs, to describe what we accomplished in those roles. We also want to think about any higher level duties. Did we train anybody? How many, did we run reports? Did we work with a budget? Did we have to open and close a facility? I have mentioned to our, especially right now, given the pandemic and given all the move to virtual, did I participate in any processes that we had to evaluate due to a move to a virtual and remote work world? And so thinking through those activities and accomplishments will take your resume from a very basic level to a much higher level of kind of significance to the employer. You want to use action verbs. And again, as I mentioned earlier, you want to use those keywords, and you'll see that mentioned throughout this whole presentation. Use the action verbs and use those keywords from the posting. So for instance, over here, you can see this individual managed, they performed, they assessed, they oversaw, they coordinated, and they instructed. And so they use action verbs to really tell me what they did. When at all possible, we recommend that you quantify when you can. So let me know if you worked with a budget, what was the size of the budget? Because it's one thing to work with a budget of $1,000. It's something much different to work with a budget of $200,000. And so give the employer an idea of the scope of the work that you've done. If you did inventory, how frequently did you do inventory? Was this a monthly or quarterly inventory? Just let me know if you trained individuals. About on average, how many employees did you train? It just gives me a better idea as an employer what you're capable of accomplishing. And again, as I mentioned, avoid using paragraphs and avoid just writing those job duties like a job posting. This should be more of what you accomplished when you were in that position.
And Dr. Mills, I'm sorry to pull myself into this,
You're
but
fine.
you spoke up about COVID-19, and I think you were kind of saying that you may have a skill in COVID-19, so that could be a skill that people learn how to work during a pandemic. Is that something that people could say they have a skill in?
Definitely. So I think how we communicate that is going to be different depending upon the individual. So if you were someone who was charged in your office with creating a remote work plan for your office, you want to talk about that. If you're someone who just had to move to a remote work plan and figure out and navigate a virtual world, that's still something you can talk about because there's computer programs you probably learned. I feel like we've become all much better at using some of these virtual programs that we are using for video chat and things like that. So that's something we can also communicate, is just needing to be able to move our workforce and our work world to a remote location. And I think I mentioned last time, that's something that's really important where we're located to be able to talk about, because we all in the Coastal Bend need to be very mindful of the fact that we may need to go remote at another time due to hurricanes. And so having that continuity of action plan for our organizations is really important. So remote work, while right now we're doing it because of a pandemic, we could be doing it down the road because of a hurricane. So that's something to keep in mind as well, and something that's definitely relevant for all of us to put on our resumes right now, especially in the Coastal Bend.
Yeah, I feel like the COVID-19 has really challenged us, and not only in thinking about the way we work, but also thinking about how we should have been prepared anyway, right? I think
Exactly.
Corpus Christi, we've always had this emergency mode, right? We're always having hurricane season. And so I think, if anything, I can just say, this is where the rubber meets the road. Are we really and truly prepared for our future?
Yeah, and we've experienced that in our office. I know we all had hurricane plans, but we've never truly had to put them into action. And so when this occurred and the pandemic started, we all went to our hurricane plans and realized, well, yeah, we said this on paper, but in reality, that's not what it looks like. And so now we're having to reinvent and reimagine our hurricane plans. And now I feel very confident that if we were to deal with a hurricane come next year, and we're all back in the offices, that I could definitely move my staff members to a remote work situation, and we would be able to continue our services to our students.
Yeah, it's almost like hurricanes are nothing. Are you kidding me?
No problem there.
A hurricane?
No,
I'm not saying bring it on. Don't come.
Yeah, no. We need a quiet year. It's been a quiet year.
Yeah.
All right. So the next section typically on your resume might be your skills section. Here, I really want individuals to think about what's going to attract the reader or scanner's attention. Again, remember, we use that term scanner because they're scanning, not reading in great detail. So making your skills section where you're talking to the employer about any software skills you might have. What is, maybe you are bilingual or multilingual. Any, we call them professional skills, but those are things like communication and leadership and teamwork, those type of skills that you might have. And then maybe there's some industry specific skills for that individual. And so that's really doing your research and knowing your industry. And again, using those keywords from that job posting that helps you be able to identify those skills sections. I encourage individuals to really think about your proficiency level too when you're describing these skills on your resume. So I would maybe put something like, I feel like I'm proficient in Microsoft Word and maybe beginner in Microsoft Excel. And so those are things you can think about. Maybe I am excellent at verbal Spanish, but I have basic understanding of written Spanish. And so I can describe my proficiency level to employers on the resume. Again, really look at that job description because that'll oftentimes really tell you what skills those employers are looking for. Are they using keywords like problem solve or analyze? Excellent oral and written communication is a line that we see on almost 80 to 90% of job postings that come through the university. When I'm working with students, that little line right there of excellent oral and written communication skills or excellent verbal and written communication skills, I see that over and over again. So that's something that I always tell the student, include on your resume if you feel like you have that skill. Now for myself, I would never put on my resume that I'm multilingual or bilingual because I don't have that skill. even if my the job posting requests it. So that's the other thing we caution with, is anything you write on your resume, make sure it's truthful, make sure you're being honest about your skill level, because anything that's on your resume, they could call you out in an interview and ask you to give an example or perform that task. So for instance, if you tell them you're excellent at Excel and you're Excel Pro, they might give you a spreadsheet or a document that they want you to work on while you're in the interview. So definitely think through what skills you're going to include and make sure you're being honest about your proficiency level on those.
And Dr. Mills, between me, you, and Megan, you need to know that when we're hiring, we always, and I mean, maybe I'm making it an insider thing now, so if you ever apply to work on our team, you need to know that we are going to put you to the test, right, Megan? We always do it, and no one ever expects it. It's almost like, okay, you finished the first part of the interview, now on to the second part, and you have no idea what we're about to make you do. So yes, we definitely make you do the work.
Yeah, and I think everybody should, or most industries should probably consider doing those things, because if you think about the price it costs for a bad hire, I mean, it's a lot. So as a candidate, you should expect to be put to the test to see if you're the right fit for that organization.
Yeah. And Dr. Mills, we have a question from Michelle again. How many bullets do you suggest so that it doesn't look too busy? And we're really talking about the skills area, right? So we don't want to put everything we've ever done in our lives. So what do you suggest?
On the skills area, there's a couple of different ways that you can format the skills area. So the skills area, I've seen bullets in columns. And so that helps me be able to fit a little more on my resume and have it, again, remember, we're balancing that white space. So if I use columns with some bullets in each column, then that helps me include more information on my resume, but balancing out that white space. And the other thing I've seen individuals do is list like maybe categories. So for instance, maybe they're accounting in the accounting field. So they list accounting, and then they list some skills beside that describe their accounting skills. Maybe they want to list software programs, and then they list software programs. And underneath that, maybe they say languages, and then they list the languages that they are proficient in. And so that is another way that you can do it. So it takes up less space. Now, when it comes to your experience section, your bullets, the number of bullets on your experience section really is depending upon the individual and how long you've been in the position. That's one thing that we look at too, because if someone's been in that position for 10 years, they're going to have a lot more bullets than someone who's only been in that position for 2 years. And so anywhere from, I typically recommend about 3 to even upwards of 7 to 8 bullets is something that you might see when you're reading a resume.
Thank you.
All right, so that last section, as I mentioned, relevance to employers top to bottom. So most of the time, this section is towards the end of our resume, and that is an honors, awards, and activities sections. Here, you can include any awards that you've received. Maybe you received an award for Employee of the Year with the City of Corpus Christi, or maybe you received Employee of the Quarter. Those are awards that you could list on your resume. You also can include any professional memberships or organizations or community service and leadership positions you've also held. So for anyone who's involved in the community, you can include those. Maybe you're in HR and you're a member of SHRM, then you can include that membership as well on your resume. And just let the individual know the dates that you were at that position or in that organization. And with that, again, include any leadership positions you had within those organizations. If you served as president of an organization, you can include those as well. And so this section is really just a section to help individuals stand out from employers, help them stand out from all the other applicants on the document. We want to include activities that are relevant again. So just be cautious of any maybe non-professional organizations or groups that you might be members of and organizations. And so that's something to consider. And this is just, I want to visually put a sample of a resume. One of the things, as I mentioned, thinking about the balance of white space on your document, I felt like it was important to just visually give one of what we might see for an individual. This is one we would walk a student through who was going through our nursing program, for instance. But you might notice that on the right-hand side of the page that I do include my dates and locations on the right-hand side. And so that's something where for instance, for the university, I include Corpus Christi, Texas. But all of my dates line up on the right-hand side of the page. And again, that's a way to balance that white space with the document. I have my bullets under each position that I had. I list the position title and then the location, and then I use bullets to describe what I accomplished in those positions. And as you can see here, this individual does have their related skills in columns so that they can fit a few more on the page. And there's many different varieties for your resume. One thing you need to, everybody keeps in mind is that we do have, you're telling your story on your resume. And so it's your document. And so your sections and your section headers may not look exactly like the other person's that you look at. And so finding a style, finding a format that's relevant for you, that works for your story, to tell your story, and one that fits your field is most important. And then, as we mentioned, that resume is a living document. It's something that you're going to want to update frequently, at least once a year. I always encourage my staff to go in and look at their resumes and make any changes or updates that might be needed. Because if I'm sitting down 5 years into a position and having to redo my resume because I'm ready to apply for a promotion, there might be things I miss, and there might be things I forget that I was involved in or did that's really important and critical to include on my resume. And then also, I cannot stress enough, proofread, proofread, proofread. Have someone else look it over yourself numerous times. You want to make sure you have spell check, you checked for grammatical errors, and that there is consistency in formatting. And again, that goes back to that 6 seconds that employers use to read their resume or to scan that resume, because if it doesn't look consistency in formatting, it may not be appealing for the employer, so they may move it to the no pile or the maybe pile. And then if they never get to it, then you've lost your chance to impress them with your skills and your experiences.
Yeah, and Dr. Mills, I just want to point out that, don't feel like you have to be the expert in grammar, right? Because Megan knows that I may be a graphics person, but if she sends me something to review, I'm usually like, looks great. Have somebody else review it for grammar, right? So there are people who actually have signs in their offices that say, I'm checking your words or your words you're saying for grammar, right? So find a friend or contact us and we'll be able to help you. Just find somebody, not me, who can help you with grammar, right? You don't have to be the expert.
We all probably have our grammar police in our family or friends.
Thank you. Yes, the grammar police.
Yeah, I've got one. My sister's my grammar police. So, if I ever need anything done, I send it to her because she will figure it out and find it if there's an error in there.
Yeah.
So just be cautious of making those mistakes. Yeah,
we have a team member who actually just joined in, and her name is Iranda, and she is our grammar police, right, Megan? She checks all our boxes.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right. Are there any questions regarding writing your resume or about the resume process?
Yes, I have a question. So let's say somebody doesn't have a ton of work experience, or let's say that they've been at their employer for 30 years. How can they make their resume look dynamic? Because imagine somebody who's been at their employer for 30 years. They're only probably going to have that one employer, maybe some education, maybe some skills, and then that's it. Is it a bad thing? Is it a good thing? And what can we do for those people?
No, then is an opportunity for you to really think about what are the trainings you participated in. If you've been in that position for 30 years, there's probably some trainings that you've participated in, probably some certifications. And if you haven't participated in trainings recently, I do encourage individuals to go out and find, there's lots of it. We even at the university with our outreach program have some free trainings on a variety of topics that I just discovered the other day. I had heard about them, but hadn't ever really looked at the list to see what was available. And I found some really cool ones. In fact, there's some pretty inexpensive like QuickBooks and those type of ones that you can do. So find those type of things to add to your skills or add to your trainings, but then also just really think through volunteer experiences. If you've done any volunteer work in the community, definitely include that in there as well. And then as again, those organizations that maybe you were a member of, or any community service that you did. And so that's one way you can expand on your resume and your areas. Now, for an individual who doesn't have a ton of experience, what I always coach our students at the university is think of everything they've participated in or been involved in as an experience. So thinking through their student organizations as experiences. So for an individual in the workforce, it might be a professional organization you've been a member of. And if you're finding that that's not the case, that you really don't have any even of those experiences you've been involved in, then maybe it's a good chance, as we talked about, to reflect and think about how you can push yourself to find those activities or those opportunities to become involved, to include those. I don't want to say to add that, to just have them added to your resume, because what I like to encourage students is that you're not just participating in a volunteer experience just to put on your resume. You're participating in it to gain skills to put on your resume.
Perfect. And my last question for me is, I've seen a lot of people put references upon request, and then I always see people who just provide the references. Is there an overall rule of thumb when it comes to that?
So we actually recommend against putting references on the page, because as we mentioned, it's 1-page document, 2-page max, and you're really trying to tell your story in a very quick amount of time. And so by having someone's name, phone number, email on that document, it's probably not telling the employer much. And so you can put the line about references available upon request. It's not 100% necessary anymore, because that's kind of a given. And that a lot of times when individuals apply for positions, they will have a separate document they want you to upload with your references, or they'll have a application that they have you fill out with your references. And so for that reason, we actually don't recommend putting it on your resume itself.
Thank you, Dr. Mills. I appreciate it. Lisa, I think I saw some questions come in on the Facebook feed.
You sure did, Megan. And we have our very friendly Scott Green from Del Mar College. Hello, Scott. We're so excited that you're here watching. And your question, or I guess your comment, was updating your resume frequently is important, because a resume is not one size fits all. Thank you so much, Scott Green. And for those of y'all who have not had a chance to watch Del Mar College's presentation about corporate services, Scott was the presenter. So go ahead and watch that on our stream. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that's a great point. It isn't a one size fits all. It's definitely customized for each position, for each person, each company.
Yeah. Okay, so I think I just have one thing just to add, and it seems like it's a lot of work to apply for a job, right? You don't just go on there and just start applying for everything, because you were talking about how much time it takes to prepare. Because, hello, now I got to look at the description and rewrite it, right? Pull out the keywords and da-da-da-da. It's like writing a paper every time you got to apply. So I think people just probably need to take a deep breath. And if you haven't been getting the job of your dreams, maybe it's because you haven't been personalizing it, right, Dr. Mills?
Correct. And I always tell my students at the university, it's a full-time job to find a full-time job. And so
I love that.
In that mindset that it does take work, and that you aren't probably, for our students, I always give them a heads up, they might not get the first job they apply for. And so it does take work. It does take time. And so trying to, if you know you're looking for positions, or you find the position that you want to apply for, try not to put it off to the last minute, because you do need to take some time to reflect on what you've accomplished and done, and to write your resume appropriately. So try your best, and to have it proofread. That's the other piece. So try your best not to write that resume at 7:00 p.m. for a posting that closes at midnight, because it probably is not going to have the same effect as one that you've taken a week to prepare and work on.
So we have Michelle with another question. Do volunteer organizations ask for resumes to join them? And if not, should we offer a resume to them anyway?
Not all do, but some may. And so, yeah, it never hurts to offer a resume to a company or an organization, even if you're just coming in as a volunteer. It can help them see what skills you have. and they might have another opportunity for you. Maybe you were coming in to volunteer in a certain avenue or a certain position for that organization, and they might say, wow, you have this awesome skill. Let's move you to this location or this opportunity. So that's a great point.
All right. So Dr. Mills, I am going to go ahead and pass the baton over to Megan so that we can go ahead and get started with our next presenter.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're so
Dr. Mills.
So next we have Nicole Presswood. Nicole! I don't know why I'm doing this fanfare thing. This is supposed to be like glitter, y'all. So like, feel it, feel it, feel it. Nicole's in the house, y'all. I wish I had music.
I like it.
I need
me?
it. Can you hear us, Nicole?
I can. Can you hear me?
Okay, yeah. So this is music. Yeah, we can hear you really well. Megan, I see you dancing. So this is the music in our head right now. And so we're super excited to have you. So for those of y'all who don't know, Nicole Presswood actually works with us on our team here in Human Resources. So we're so excited to be partners in, I don't want to say in crime, but partners in this championship work of optimizing our city employees to be the best employees in the entire city of Corpus Christi. So Nicole is going to be taking over the presentation, but Megan, did you have a few words about what Nicole's going to be talking about?
Yeah, I'm so excited because when I came to Nicole to talk about this session, she was all in, and she was so excited to be able to talk about her aspect and her perspective from the recruiting side here at the city of Corpus Christi. So not every single industry is the same when it comes to recruiting. And the city is really unique in the way that we have over 35 departments, and we have maybe about 3 and the manager as the recruiting team. So there is a lot of work to be done and work to be done efficiently. And so Nicole is going to talk a little bit about what she sees on a daily basis, some tips and advice for people who are applying to the city. And we are so excited to have her. So please help me in welcoming Miss Nicole Presswood.
All right. What an intro. Thank you, Miss Megan. For starters, I'm glad my mic was muted for the entire previous presentation, because every other point I found myself going, exactly, yes, right, exactly, thank you. As I'm cheering, luckily y'all didn't hear me, I'm actually simultaneously reviewing resumes and applications as we speak, because I'm gonna probably go over a lot of what she just mentioned. I am getting hundreds. At first I thought due to this pandemic I would see a decrease. Actually, I thought because people are kind of getting this assistance and staying home, that I would see somewhat of a decrease with the amount, the quantity of applications, but that is not the case. In fact, I am seeing an extreme spike. I just finished one that, while it was open for 2 weeks, on average, I would have probably seen maybe 75. It had just about 130 that I had to read through. And some organizations, they have a software in place that can really do a portion of the work for them. Again, to Ms. Dr. Mills' point, certain words, because it's a living document, they're emphasizing those points. And so a lot of softwares can actually do some of that work. For us in particular, our software is manual, so I do need to read through each one. So to touch, again, I hate to be repetitive, but it's really those same valid points. You got to look at it as a living document. That's my favorite reference. It's going to be something that you market directly to that position. I believe Michelle had a question in the comments early on, and she said, if you're applying to one organization, one company, how many resumes should you have? I get that question almost daily. And my response is a different resume for every single position, because I'm going to open this position with this mindset of qualifications that I'm looking for. And I'm going to look at you as a totally different person than when I just screened for this other position. I'm going to look at you as a totally different person for that. So I think that's a valuable point. Mistakes that I commonly see, not enough information. So they'll say a title, and sometimes one can assume what that title would include, but I can't go about things with assumptions. So I find often that it'll just say customer service. And then they'll give me the dates and they'll go to the next one. And I'm like, okay, what kind of customer service? Was it phone customer service? Was it in-person customer service? I need elaboration. But then at the same time, I come into the issue of too much information. So not exaggerating, just finished one that was a 12-page resume. By the time I got to the end, I was sweating. What did I read on page 1? Let me start over.
I'm watching this session right now.
You're making me sweat over here because I feel like everyone's talking to me. I don't even know how I've ever gotten a job. I mean, like, I literally feel like.
And see, that's where I struggle. I don't mean it.
I just need to write a book. Go read my book on Amazon.
That.
If you want to hire me, go read my book on Amazon. Kidding. Oh my goodness. Okay, so
all of the tools that Dr. Mills just went over are perfect, in my opinion. They're perfect because I do see this day in and day out, and I think those recommendations and guidelines are spot on. Mm-hmm. So go back to the mistakes in general that I see. Not enough info, too much info. Our specific software, our process, again, I'm speaking specific to the city of Corpus Christi, is that we have an application that you can also attach a resume. That gets a bit tricky. Sometimes it confuses people. What I always recommend is if you are going to complete the application and attach your resume, please make sure they match. I would say, just to throw out some numbers, 1 out of 5 that I look at, if I have to reference one or both, they do not align. Either the resume is not up to date, or the application, they maybe put one in there, and then they got tired of retyping everything the resume said, so they gave up maybe. I'm just assuming. And so they don't align. So if you're going to apply, again, specific to City of Corpus Christi, and you see an application area available, but you also see a resume attachment available, I recommend very highly that you have an up-to-date resume that you attach. And specifically, if you are not going to complete the entire application, make sure that employment history is completely up to date so that they are in line. Because at some point when they're not in line, you start second guessing. Okay, did you really do that? Did you not do that? Are these dates right? Are these dates right? And then we're all taking entirely too much time to get through your resume. To her point, 6 seconds. Off the tip of my tongue, I was, trying to guess what she was going to say. And I said 15 seconds. That's the kind of bar that I hold for myself. What can I determine in 15 seconds? Okay, I like what I see. I'm going to dive in further, or vice versa. So 6 seconds is probably what we should be at. 15 seconds is just kind of a personal bar for me. The marketing kind of comes into play. Again, I'm a little bit redundant. Not too much color. Not a photo. I don't want to be responsible for, not that I would or ever, but somebody could say, oh, they saw my photo and that's why they didn't move forward with me. And so because that opportunity is there, I definitely recommend don't put a photo. I recommend emphasizing your dates for your employment history, but not emphasizing your dates for things like your education. I feel like, in my opinion, that can start to leave room for a bias again. Oh, you got your master's degree in 1956? Well, goodness gracious, what age are you, etc. Again, that's not something I would, but it leaves that door open for misinterpretation. Oh, I wasn't selected because you saw how old I was, etc., etc. So I recommend maybe leaving those dates off, but emphasize the dates of employment history, because oftentimes a specific quality or qualification that we need is to know you specifically hit 5 years of supervisory. You specifically hit 5 years of project management. So I have to be doing the math as I see those dates in the qualifications. The formatting, again, not a lot of color, not only in a printing setting, but just if I'm looking at these on my laptop, for instance, in the middle of a pandemic, you can also see in a guest bedroom, eyes are drawn differently. So if you have it very streamlined, not a lot of color, not a lot of pictures, not a lot of crazy fonts, I'm seeing that lately, then you can, as the recruiter, get straight to the meat and see off the bat, this person's great, go on to the next one. So I know a lot of that was repetitive, emphasizing the mistakes. It's just kind of a fine line. There is an art to it. I loved her saying it's a full-time job to find a full-time job, because at the end of the day, it is. And there was a few things that I kind of wrote down, more so as she was saying it. I like the idea of keeping that base resume. So I just mentioned gear your resume to the application you're applying to, but have a base resume. So the meat is going to stay the same, but maybe if you're going to customer service, you're emphasizing what you did. I answered 200 phone calls a day. I had 500 walk-ins a day that I had to personally assist. But then you come over here and maybe you're trying to be an admin assistant. Well, then, yes, you answered the phones, but it was a multi-line phone. You know, you multitask. You were faxing while you were scanning, while you were assisting people that came to the door. So it's the same meat, but you're emphasizing a different technical skill that you had. So I like having that base resume. You know, she mentioned you're going to get a ton of resumes. So just in perspective, you know, the one that I just finished with 125, 130, you're one out of that many. You have to stand out. You don't have to just stand out. For me, in the case of when applying to City of Corpus Christi in a recruiter capacity, but you then have to stand out a second time for a hiring manager and or panel. So while I was able to narrow it down to maybe a fourth, let's just say hypothetically, then you again have to stand out for that hiring manager and or panel. So it is really critical to make yourself marketable for that position. I know that was a mouthful. Tell me if I'm talking too fast.
And Megan, I don't even know what happened. You just kind of dropped off. But I just wanted to tell you that I think one of the joys of having you on the team is that you're just a wealth of knowledge. Not only were you coming to give this presentation, but you were actually actively reviewing resumes while we were having this presentation by Dr. Mills. So I just want to thank you for that. But I think more importantly for me, you dropped so much knowledge. But I think
I'm sorry, I get to going and then I'm like,
You know what's crazy? Okay, so this was my plan, and everyone can laugh at me, right? My plan was, as they're talking, I'm just gonna be like putting in the comments on the bottom, all their top tips, and y'all were just like hitting me with like, I felt like I was getting punched with like awesome quotes. So you did such an amazing job. And I know I just kind of wanted to chime in so you can catch your breath. But when you talked about making the resume stand out, you know, I think part of it has to do with what Dr. Mills talked about with the white space, maybe utilizing the white space more. But then, you know, I have to say something, and it's a little frustrating. What about those curvy fonts? I like curvy fonts, but we're not supposed to use them.
I think it's just hard because I think that trying to figure out how to put this.
And I'm really asking for a friend.
Right.
Sorry, Lisa. I had to laugh.
This is somewhat probably my opinion versus the bar. So it's still dependent on the position of which you're applying to. Example, one of my departments is communications. One of the positions within communications is graphic designer. My expectation is to kind of see their skill coming out. So my experience when I'm seeing those, I'm going to see some curvy font. I'm going to see some graphic-like emphasis just within that resume. Not only are they usually attaching some kind of work that they've done to showcase themselves, but they're also going to incorporate that into their resume. and the expectation is there, and I understand it, and I value it, because at the end of the day, it's not just me, but it's that direct hiring manager that's looking to see their skill level. And again, sometimes they're looking for that instant gratification where they can see it off the bat, like, oh, this person's creative. They can, and then you can dive in to the meat. All right, this person's got 5 years in this industry and knows what they're talking about. So I think on a whole, you want to avoid curvy fonts, but also be mindful of the position of which you are applying to.
I love it. And I don't know if she knows, but I just pulled her into this. Dr. Mills, you are in this now.
Yes.
And so we talked a little bit about how.
I'm reiterating what you said. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and y'all hadn't met each other, right? I don't know how to do this, but I can point at Nicole and Dr. Mills, and y'all hadn't met each other. I can't do this. Like, I need to learn this thing. So there's Nicole. I don't know if y'all can see. And here's Dr. Mills. And they hadn't met each other. So we've connected them to each other. So hopefully we can get more Islanders hired here at the city, because I'm an Islander. So you know what? Islanders are champions. I'll tell you that. But the point here is Dr. Mills did talk about how hard it is, right? I'm going to bring you a quote, Dr. Mills, because it's epic. It's a full-time job to get a full-time job, right? So, and I want to even reel in our learning and development hat, which is about how you can work like a champion. It's a full-time job to work like a champion. Like anything that you're trying to do with excellence, you can't just cookie cutter it and say, oh, done, done, done. You have to personalize, right? If it's a report you have to write, you got to personalize it. You got to do everything with excellence. So, I mean, when I hear a theory, right? So the theory-based knowledge here is from Dr. Mills. And then the reality, right? The practice is Nicole right here, right? I love how they're matching. It makes sense. So y'all are hearing that this is real. You must spend time optimizing your resume for each application you apply to, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, you mentioned the curvy lines in the graphic design. So yeah, that's knowing your field and knowing your industry, and what might be more acceptable for a graphic design resume is going to be very different for an engineering or accounting resume. So so definitely knowing your field is really important. And so finding out what some of the kind of custom things are to do to your resume within your field is critical.
I actually really liked how Nicole said that as a recruiter, every time she's about to screen something, she has a different mindset. So the mindset is never always the same for her. It's, what job is this? Is this a project manager? Let me put on my recruiter project manager mindset and start looking. So and she has a variety of departments. It's just not Parks and Rec. It's a variety, and they all range. So I think it's really important as a recruiter to be able to put on those different mindsets. And then as a candidate, you should definitely know that that's happening, because if you just give the one resume, then the mindset that she has on may not coincide. And then there goes your opportunity. But one thing I did want to ask you, Nicole, specifically to the city, I don't know that it's been a really long time since I've applied to anything at the city. And I don't know that there's a specific place for recommendation letters. So what would you say to somebody who wants to add a recommendation letter? Is that something that y'all do take into consideration? Is there a specific place in the application that lives, or should they attach it to their resume?
So you can attach it to your resume, I guess, to directly answer your question. Attach it to your resume under attach resume. So it's going to be your resume, but the prefix is going to be your recommendation letter. I will tell you, at my level, that's not something I consider. Where that would come into play is a hiring manager and or the panel. So it's not that I don't recommend it, just simply because it doesn't come into play for me. But once you're past me meeting the qualifications, then that would potentially come into play. So I think it was kind of a long-winded answer, but there's definitely a place. Attach it as the attachment of the resume, just as the prefix. So it's one attachment. Otherwise, the reason I emphasize that specifically with ours is oftentimes I'm seeing people attach, let's say they have 3 recommendation letters. Or yesterday, this is another point Dr. Mills had put that you don't want to do. Yesterday, I had someone that attached their driver's license and their social security, and I opened it. I was like, close, I didn't say it. I There's this like, so you don't want to go into attaching 6 different things, I guess is more so my point. You can just have it as the prefix to that attachment, of which potentially will come into play under hiring manager review.
I think that's really good to know. All the time, people accidentally call our area asking these kinds of questions, and then I always forward them to you. But then I wonder, what was the right answer for that question? I wonder what Nicole said. And so it's always good to finally have an answer, so that in case it ever comes up again, you know, we can accurately answer in terms of the processes that we have at the city. So thank you.
Yeah, of course.
All right. So I think we've kind of reached the end of the presentation, and I don't see any other comments coming in from our viewers, even though we've had tons and tons of people viewing today. Now, one thing I can mention, somebody put 12 pages. Scott Green, is that how long your resume is?
It was him.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so y'all, like, you know, everybody's always asking for a friend. They're always talking for a friend. So, you know, the point here is that I think, oh, and I'm so sorry. I guess Michelle had a question and it just popped in. Do you need to let the person know that you are using them as a reference, correct? Some do not. Yeah, can you guys answer that for us?
I say yes. I say yes. For us, when you enter an interview, you have to automatically give permission for us to reach out to your references. And I would definitely recommend giving them a heads up. Hey, this employer may be reaching out to you, because oftentimes that panel will know the selected candidate that day and dive right into references. So there's not a lot of, they may or may not in the next few days. I would just say, hey, this employer is potentially going to reach out to you. Just give them a heads up before even the interview, at least in the case of us.
Yeah, we always recommend for students to talk to the individuals they're putting down as references and letting them know and asking their permission if they can put them down as a reference. Because we'd be surprised sometimes individuals will ask to put, I've been asked to put as a reference for a student, and all I did was see the student one time. And so then that's a conversation about, who do you really want as your references? You want someone who knows that your work ethic and who knows about you and can speak to your skills and abilities. And so just really having that conversation with the individual and making sure they're on board with being your reference.
Exactly.
Well, I am so grateful that we had this session, because there were some things that I learned personally about my resume that I need to go back and take a look at for sure, because it has been a while. But Lisa talked about putting things into practice today. And I know one thing is for sure, that I'm going to try to do what Dr. Mills said and just make sure that as my career is kind of progressing, that my resume is progressing with me and that I'm not leaving it to collect dust. So thank you so much, Dr. Mills, for putting me in check and helping me to remind myself that it needs to be growing with me and not just sitting there, regardless of whether I'm actively applying or not actively applying. One day it's going to happen and I'm not going to remember anything that I did. So I think updating it and letting it grow with me is going to be important.
Yeah. And how about even maybe creating the resume of your dreams? Maybe you haven't even achieved the things. Maybe you have one resume that's the real resume of, this is what I've done. And then another resume of, okay, this is what I want to be 5 years from now, right? I want these skills and I want these experiences, so that in your organization, you're always going to see the opportunities if you're looking for them. So if you've written in your resume that you want to work on project management, when a project comes along, like managing a task force for COVID-19, you're going to go, oh, I need to add that to my resume, right? So I think that might be even an idea. Not only do you need a real one, but you also need your learning resume, okay?
So we tell students as freshmen who come in to look at their dream job they want to get when they graduate, look at that job description now, see what skills it's going to need when you graduate, and that's what you need to be working toward your whole time you're here at the university. So even as a professional in the field, think about your ultimate goal, what's your ultimate dream job, and then like you said, be working towards those skills that you need to get to that point.
And we have one more question from Michelle, and she's asking, how long do you keep the resumes for? And I'm assuming that this is for Nicole Presswood.
it's kind of a open answer, but ultimately I would say 6 months. And where I came up with that is, let's say you apply for something in June of 2020, and the department actually moves forward with another candidate. They select them, that person starts. 2 months later, they are not a good fit, they leave on their own accord, or vice versa, they leave either way. That department can then reference within 6 months of your application that resume. So let's see, June to December, technically that department can go back and reference your resume. After, again, I'm just using this month as an example, so after December of this year, we would not be able to refer to your specific application. We could repost, and then you can then reapply, at which point they could reference it. But it's, in general, it's only a 6-month window that they are even allowed to go back and reference your application.
That was really good to know.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
So
learning.
don't assume, right? There's all these assumptions that you applied, and so they've seen you, and so they'll find you when another job is there. But no, she's like whispering it. No,
No.
don't fool yourself.
Another question I get often. Well, I applied to, this one 3 years ago. Can't you find that one? Oh,
3 years?
Sorry.
Are you kidding? We have new software 3 years ago, right? I'm like, you don't exist 3 years ago. So yeah. All right. So I think that's pretty much our presentation for today. I think I want to just reiterate to everybody how you have to name and claim the things you want to do in your life. So if there's anything that you learned today that you feel would serve you in your future, write it down, name it, claim it, and aim at it, right? So boom, aim at it like an archer, and make sure you do that thing today, right? So whether it's maybe sending us your resume so we can help you review it, don't send it to me. I'm not a grammarian, I already told you. And Megan's like, no, okay. So so Nicole, it's all you and Dr. Mills. So actually, that's a great question. If people did want to have a resume review, I know obviously at Texas A&M University Corpus Christi, when you go to school there, you're pretty much taken care of. I'm an alumni. I'm pretty much taken care of. But how would other people have resumes reviewed? Let's just think through that. How would that happen in our community?
I do get that often. In the community, I think that, I don't remember who made the point, but just in general, have it reviewed by, I will quote, grammar police. I will piggyback that. I consider myself, Megan can tell you, a grammar police. It's very hard sometimes for me because it jumps out, like a sore thumb for me, especially when you're talking about the about me section, the very top, the opening line, and it's misspelt one or more words, and I'm just, okay, here we go. And not only because I necessarily blame them for maybe not spelling that word right, but I know right then they didn't take the time to review it. As you mentioned, don't wait till 7 p.m. when it closes at midnight. They did not, the effort was not there. So it's not just maybe you didn't have that technical skill to spell that word right, but you also didn't get it reviewed, didn't do it in advance, et cetera, et cetera. So that being said, I do not have a bias or anything. When I see that, just know that in my grammar police brain, it hurts. It hurt me.
You sound like the perfect person for your role, though. We do need grammar police, I think people who like reading, seems like you read a lot. So yeah, it seems like you're the perfect person for your role.
Do read a lot. But yes,
right.
I think people, I can only speak to city employees. I know you mentioned the community, but I get resumes all the time. And I always open up with, do not send it to me unless you are in full open mind to my criticisms, because you will get them. You will get them.
Yeah.
Fix this, and this. You misspelled this, and change the whole format. I'll see it when you send it back.
Yeah. Crazy.
I do get it. I've had probably this year alone, I think I'm getting more, and I think maybe because everything's electronic, mindsets are a little different right now. So people are really brushing up their resumes. You know, I kind of associate it with the times that we're in right now. So I've definitely just on the side, just as almost a private gesture for city employees, look at them, you know, just as a Nicole critique.
They're in the family. When you're in the family, you get taken care of, right? All right. So we don't have any more questions from the audience. And Megan, you don't have any. Megan, I feel like we both have usually the same questions. I had all these questions and you asked all of them, which is great. So thank you so much. We both have the same frame of mind, I guess. And I just want to thank you all so much for joining us. Again, don't forget that we host these presentations streaming live every Friday at 10 a.m. And they're all different. It's not always the same. You can always watch the recordings always on our Facebook page. And now streaming on YouTube, right, Megan?
Yeah, we're spreading our wings a little bit more.
We figured out how to do that. So now we're also on YouTube, so you can catch us on YouTube. And again, we always ask that you take one thing that you learned today and you implement it in your life so that you can learn like a champion. And I just created a new hashtag, apply like a champion. Make sure when you apply to work for the city of Corpus Christi, you are doing it like a champion, because we're looking for that one person who will be the champion of all those hundreds of applications that Nicole's looking through. When you get that job, you are the champion, and that's what we're looking for. So apply like a champion. Thank you all so much for your time. And I'm going to end with our slide, pretty much just letting you know that every Friday we are here to share with you and help you learn more about not only your education assistance opportunities, but how you can learn different tools to help you live a better life here at the city of Corpus Christi. My name is Lisa Wisner, and I am so excited that you are here with us today. And on behalf of Megan Isasi and Iranda Chavez, part of the Learning Institute team in the Human Resources Department, we thank you so much, and we are always here for you so that you can become a champion at the city of Corpus Christi. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.